dinner, Dad yelled, "You're selfish, your sister deserves better." I smiled and said, "Good. Then I'm done paying her rent." The room went silent, until Dad realized what I really meant. This isn't just a story. It's the kind you'll think about at 2 a.m. If you're ready for the truth they never saw coming, buckle up. The dining room was supposed to be a sanctuary of warmth and connection, but that October evening it transformed into a war zone. My father, Robert, slammed his fist against the mahogany table, causing the crystal wine glasses to dance and silverware to clatter like wind chimes in a storm. His voice thundered through our Chicago suburb home, cutting through the air like a machete. "You're selfish, Flora. Your sister is superior to you in every conceivable way." The entire room froze. Forks hung suspended midair, burgundy wine trembled in crystal glasses, and uncomfortable glances ricocheted between my relatives like pinballs. My mother, Catherine, gasped softly, her emerald eyes darting between us as if she could somehow rewind the moment. My cousins shifted in their leather chairs, uncertain whether to avert their gaze or witness the carnage unfolding. Autumn, my younger sister, reclined in her seat with that maddening smirk, the gleam in her amber eyes betraying her satisfaction. She had orchestrated this confrontation, perhaps even rehearsed it. I didn't shed a tear. I didn't scream back. Instead I laughed, a sound sharp enough to slice through steel. "Perfect," I said with icy composure, my hazel eyes locking onto Robert's furious stare. "Then I won't be covering her rent anymore." The silence that descended felt heavier than concrete. My father's face flushed crimson, veins bulging at his temples like angry rivers. He shoved his chair back so violently it shrieked against the hardwood floor, pointing at me as if I'd transformed from daughter to enemy infiltrator. "Get out," he bellowed, his voice echoing off our vaulted ceilings. It was meant to be Catherine's 52nd birthday celebration. Instead, it became the night I finally shattered my chains. When I'd arrived at our Winnetka mansion earlier that evening, I'd steeled myself for the familiar tension. But I convinced myself I could endure it for Catherine's sake. It was her special day, and I yearned for her to experience one peaceful evening, one night where she could bask in attention instead of mediating family warfare. The aroma of herb-crusted salmon and garlic rosemary bread permeated the air, scents that once symbolized home and belonging. Catherine welcomed me with her gentle smile at the front door, her warmth momentarily loosening the knot of anxiety in my chest. For one fragile moment, I believed we might actually achieve a normal family dinner. The dining table was arranged with meticulous care, ivory candles flickering softly, bone china gleaming under the chandelier's warm glow. My cousins from Milwaukee chatted animatedly. My aunts exchanged gossip in hushed whispers. Crystal glasses clinked in miniature toasts throughout the room. Catherine radiated pure joy, glowing as she absorbed the rare attention focused entirely on her. I thought to myself, this evening belongs to her, not to Autumn. But tranquility in our household never lingered long. It was always an unwelcome guest that overstayed its welcome. As we began our meal, Robert executed his predictable routine, steering every conversation back to Autumn. His voice swelled with paternal pride as he launched into his familiar monologue. "She's absolutely thriving at Northwestern University," he proclaimed, his fork gesturing through the air like a conductor's baton. "Perfect GPA, managing her internship at Goldman Sachs, excelling in every aspect of life. She's everything a parent could dream of." I forced a smile and chewed slowly, his rehearsed speech landing like stones in my stomach. Autumn lowered her head in feigned humility, but her eyes sparkled with unmistakable satisfaction. Everyone else at the table sat in respectful silence, allowing Robert to hold court as if his words were sacred scripture. Catherine glanced at me with apologetic tenderness, but it couldn't diminish the sting of his praise. I sipped my Pinot Noir, attempting to drown out his accolades, but the words kept clawing at me. "She possesses unlimited potential. She'll achieve greatness. Everything a father could want in a daughter." It wasn't Autumn I resented, it was how I'd become invisible beside her brilliance. Every celebration, every family gathering, regardless of whose moment it was intended to be, invariably transformed into Autumn's showcase. Even on Catherine's birthday, I swallowed my bitterness, promising myself I wouldn't destroy the evening's harmony. But then Robert turned those piercing, expectant eyes toward me, and everything shifted like tectonic plates. "Flora," he said, his voice laden with authority and judgment. "Are you supporting Autumn adequately?" My fork froze halfway to my mouth. Supporting her adequately? I'd been covering her downtown Chicago apartment rent for 8 months, paying for groceries, her iPhone bill, even wiring money when she exceeded her budget on designer clothes and expensive dinners. Before I could formulate a response, Robert turned to Autumn like a prosecutor examining his star witness. "Does she help you sufficiently?" he pressed, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer he wanted. Autumn tilted her head thoughtfully, pausing just long enough to capture everyone's undivided attention. Then she smiled, sugary sweet, but I recognized the calculated gleam in her eyes. "She does help," Autumn admitted with practiced reluctance. "But there's something I've been wanting to discuss." My stomach plummeted like a stone dropped into a deep well. I already knew what was approaching like a freight train. Robert leaned forward eagerly, as if she were about to request the crown jewels of our family legacy. "Continue, sweetheart," he encouraged. Her gaze locked onto mine, her voice dripping with artificial innocence that could have been bottled and sold. "I need a car, Flora. Something reliable would make commuting to campus and my internship so much more manageable." The dining room went dead silent. Forks clinked softly against china as every pair of eyes swiveled toward me like spotlights. "A car," I repeated, setting my fork down with deliberate precision. She nodded enthusiastically, her performance worthy of an Academy Award. "Just something dependable to keep up with my demanding schedule." I turned to Robert, disbelief etched across my features like carved marble. "If she requires a car, why don't you purchase it for her?" The atmosphere in the room thickened instantly, like storm clouds gathering before a tornado. Robert's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing into laser-focused daggers of disapproval. "Are you seriously telling me you can't do this one thing for your sister?" His voice carried the weight of years of disappointment. My pulse accelerated, but I maintained steady composure. "I'm already covering her rent. If she wants a vehicle, that's her responsibility to handle." That's when he detonated like a nuclear weapon. His voice rose to a thunderous roar, each word sharper and more cutting than the last. "Autumn possesses incredible potential. She's destined for greatness, but she needs unwavering support. I've invested half my income into her future because she deserves every advantage. And you? You can't even manage this simple request." The table sank into suffocating silence. My cousins stared down at their plates, shifting uncomfortably in their seats, no one daring to make eye contact with me. Autumn feigned embarrassment perfectly, but the smug satisfaction tugging at the corners of her lips betrayed her true emotions. Then Robert delivered the devastating final blow that would echo in my mind forever. "She's superior to you, Flora. She always has been, and she always will be." A laugh erupted from somewhere deep inside me, sharp, cold, almost unrecognizable as my own voice. "Perfect," I said, meeting his furious glare with steel-eyed determination. "Then she can cover her own rent from now on." His face turned the color of fresh blood, veins pulsing visibly as he shoved his chair back with violent force. The screech against the hardwood echoed through the room like a banshee's wail. "Get out," Robert roared, pointing toward our front door as if I were some dangerous intruder who'd violated the sanctity of our home. "If you're going to be this selfish, you don't belong in this family." The room seemed to collapse inward on itself like a dying star. Catherine's manicured hand flew to cover her mouth, her eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. My cousins whispered nervously among themselves. My aunts deliberately looked away, suddenly fascinated by their wine glasses. Autumn kept her head lowered, but her calculated silence spoke volumes louder than words. She had orchestrated this exact outcome with surgical precision. I stood slowly from my chair, steadying my racing heartbeat and forcing calm across my features. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said softly, offering Catherine the only gift I could provide that night, my gracious exit. Then I turned and walked upstairs to my childhood bedroom, the one frozen in time since I'd moved to my Lincoln Park apartment. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it as the muffled chaos of raised voices downstairs drifted upward through the floorboards. I could hear Catherine pleading desperately with Robert to calm down and reconsider. I could hear my father's continued rage reverberating through the walls, and I could hear Autumn's strategic silence, loud as thunder in a clear sky. I sat on the edge of my twin bed with its faded purple comforter, phone trembling in my hands, scrolling mindlessly through social media as white-hot anger burned through my veins like molten lava. This pattern wasn't new or surprising. Robert had belittled and diminished me countless times before. He had consistently elevated Autumn at my expense for years, but doing it on Catherine's birthday, in front of our entire extended family, that was the final unforgivable cut. I refused to continue begging for basic respect anymore. I wouldn't keep serving as their personal ATM, their emotional scapegoat, their convenient afterthought. If Robert wanted me banished from this family, then I'd leave, but definitely not quietly. Downstairs, the dinner conversation resumed, but it sounded thin, forced, artificial, like laughter echoing through an abandoned theater. Plates clinked together, glasses knocked in hollow toasts, forks scraped against china as if nothing catastrophic had just exploded in their midst. That was my family's specialty: bury the wreckage beneath polite conversation, polish the surface until it gleamed, and ensure Autumn remained perpetually in the spotlight. But I was completely finished playing their carefully scripted game. I pulled out my iPhone, hands trembling but steady enough to navigate to my banking app. The screen glowed back at me like a portal to freedom. There it was, the joint checking account Robert had pressured me into opening 3 years ago. He'd called it a safety net, a financial backup for family emergencies. In reality, it had transformed into Autumn's personal trust fund, the account where I automatically deposited portions of my marketing salary for her rent, groceries, and endless material desires. The balance displayed on my screen made my stomach flip violently. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, gone like smoke. I scrolled through the detailed transaction history, each line item a dagger to my heart. Withdrawals marked emergency cash. Transfers labeled tuition assistance and living expenses. Bills I'd never authorized or approved. But it wasn't just Autumn draining my resources. Robert had been systematically siphoning funds. My own father had been bleeding me financially dry, then possessed the audacity to label me selfish and ungrateful. The anger that rose within me wasn't explosive fire, it was crystalline ice. Controlled, calculated, surgical. I transferred every remaining dollar into my personal savings account, selected close account, and felt something heavy uncoil in my chest like chains falling away. The financial umbilical cord was severed permanently. Autumn's next month's rent? That was no longer my problem to solve. Let Robert play the generous savior he claimed to be. By sunrise, the inevitable fallout struck like a Category 5 hurricane. My phone buzzed incessantly with incoming calls. Autumn's contact flashed first on my screen. Against my better judgment and curiosity about her reaction, I answered on the third ring. "Flora, what the hell is wrong with you?" she shrieked, her voice cracking with panic and disbelief. "You completely drained the account. I can't cover my rent now. My landlord is going to evict me." I leaned back against my headboard, my voice calm as polished glass. "Dad says you're superior to me in every way. Then prove it and figure this out yourself." "You're deliberately ruining my entire life," she screamed into the phone. "No," I replied with quiet conviction, "you and Dad accomplished that yourselves." I ended the call abruptly, her outraged protests still buzzing in my ear like persistent static electricity. A knock at my bedroom door followed within minutes. Catherine stood in the hallway wrapped in her faded pink bathrobe, her face carved with sleepless worry lines and exhaustion. "Can we please talk?" she asked in barely above a whisper. I stepped aside reluctantly, and she sank heavily onto my bed. "Your father didn't mean those horrible things last night," she whispered while rubbing her temples in small circles. "He just becomes overly passionate when it involves Autumn's future." I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. "Passionate?" He humiliated me in front of our entire extended family. He literally told me to get out of our home. Her shoulders slumped forward in defeat. "You understand how your father can be when he's upset. Just fix this situation, Flora. For the sake of our family unity." "Fix what exactly?" I snapped, my patience finally evaporating completely. "I've been covering Autumn's expenses for years without complaint. I'm done being everyone's personal bank." Catherine's eyes widened with genuine panic. "Flora, please don't do anything you'll regret later." I didn't respond to her plea. She left my room quietly, the soft click of the door sealing me back into blessed silence and solitude. The remainder of that day brought a relentless barrage of increasingly desperate text messages from Autumn. "Flora, I need the rent money immediately." "What's wrong with you? Answer me right now." I finally typed back, "Ask Dad. He's got your back, remember." Then I muted her number permanently. By early evening, it was Robert's turn to call. His voice was clipped and barely controlled, almost seething with rage. You closed our joint account without permission. It contained my money, I stated flatly, offering no apologies. You and Autumn have drained me financially long enough. This ends today. You're making your sister homeless over your petty jealousy. She's superior to me, remember? She'll survive and thrive. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Then the line went completely dead. But I knew Robert's personality intimately. He wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. His threatening words still echoed in my ears, heavy as a storm warning. 2 mornings later, I pulled into their circular driveway and froze in complete shock. My old Honda Civic, the car I'd purchased at 17 with waitressing tips and saved paychecks, sat prominently displayed with a bright orange for sale sign plastered across the windshield. My first taste of independence reduced to a commodity for sale. I stormed through their front door without knocking. Catherine nearly dropped the ceramic platter she was carrying. "Where's Dad right now?" Her eyes flickered nervously around the kitchen. "He's running errands downtown." "Why are you here?" I pointed accusingly toward the driveway. "He's selling my car without permission." She wrung her hands anxiously. "You haven't driven it in over 2 years, sweetheart." He thought it was just taking up space. "It belongs to me," I snapped with finality. "Not his property to touch or sell." I marched outside, ripped the offensive sign from my windshield, and drove the car directly to my apartment complex. The engine rattled and protested, but to me it roared like sweet victory. Within minutes, Robert's name illuminated my phone screen. His voice carried smug satisfaction. "Changed your mind about helping family?" "You don't get to sell what belongs to me," I said firmly. He chuckled darkly, a sound that chilled my blood. "You abandoned it here for years. That makes it mine to handle however I choose. You're finished in this family, Flora. Dead to us." "Fine by me," I said with ice-cold resolve. "Let's see how well you manage Autumn's expenses without my financial support." I hung up immediately, rage simmering beneath my calm exterior, while my determination hardened into unbreakable steel. That evening, I methodically combed through years of joint account statements, bank records, and financial documents. The numbers confirmed my worst suspicions and validated every angry thought. Robert hadn't simply helped Autumn succeed. He'd systematically siphoned thousands for her tuition, monthly utilities, groceries, and even his own personal cash withdrawals for gambling debts I'd never known about. I wasn't just their reliable support system, I'd been their unsuspecting prey for years. The ultimate betrayal arrived 3 days later. I opened my apartment door after work and froze in absolute horror. My home was completely gutted. My flat-screen TV gone, laptop missing, clothes ransacked and scattered. Even my grandmother's antique watch collection vanished into thin air. No forced entry, no broken locks or damaged windows. Only 2 people possessed spare keys to my sanctuary, Robert and Catherine. My blood boiled with righteous fury. I dialed his number with shaking fingers. "Where are my stolen belongings?" He sounded almost amused by my distress. "What are you talking about, Flora?" "You robbed me to fund Autumn's lifestyle," I accused directly. "Family comes first," he said simply, not even bothering to deny his criminal actions. "You'd understand that concept if you weren't so fundamentally selfish." "You stole from your own daughter," I spat into the phone. "You'd comprehend loyalty if you weren't so self-centered and ungrateful," he replied coldly. I forced my voice to remain steady despite my rage. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Dad." And I hung up decisively. The next morning, I sat across from Amanda Richardson, a criminal defense attorney in downtown Chicago, laying everything bare on her mahogany desk. Photos of my ransacked apartment, receipts proving ownership, bank records, documented proof that every missing item belonged to me legally. She tapped her gold pen thoughtfully against her notepad. "This constitutes felony theft, Flora. You can absolutely press criminal charges. At minimum, threaten legal action. He'll fold immediately to avoid prosecution." For the first time in years, I felt power shifting back into my capable hands like a river changing course. That night, I called Robert one final time, discreetly hitting record on my phone. "I consulted with a criminal attorney today," I announced. "Return everything you stole, or I file felony charges tomorrow morning." He laughed nervously, but strain cracked through his bravado. You'd actually send your own father to prison? Try me, I said with unwavering conviction. I have your recorded admission of theft from earlier. Silence stretched endlessly. Then his voice cracked with fear. Fine, I'll wire the money for replacement costs. 3 days later, my account balance reflected every stolen cent, wired back without excuses or apologies. I'd won completely, but I was finished forever. I sold my Lincoln Park apartment, accepted a marketing position in Denver, Colorado, and packed my remaining possessions. My new mountain apartment was smaller but peaceful, no manipulative phone calls, no guilt trips, just pure freedom at last. Months passed like clean Rocky Mountain air until Catherine's number flashed on my screen one autumn evening. Flora, it's about Autumn. She's pregnant and alone. The father abandoned her. She has absolutely nothing left. We desperately need your help. I leaned back in my leather chair, almost laughing at the irony. She's superior to me, right? She'll figure it out brilliantly. And I hung up forever. Weeks later, Autumn emailed me directly with desperation. I'm sorry, Flora. Single motherhood is harder than I imagined. Dad's completely broke now. Please help us survive. I clicked spam and closed my laptop with finality. They drained me emotionally, mocked my worth publicly, and stolen from me criminally. Now they could learn survival without me. I exhaled deeply, feeling lighter and more complete than ever before. I wasn't Flora the human ATM or Flora the invisible daughter anymore. I was Flora, free, untethered, successful, and finally whole. So tell me, was I wrong to cut them off completely, to fight back against their abuse, or was this the only way I could reclaim my life and dignity?